The moving truck had barely rolled away when she arrived, heeled clacking against the freshly swept sidewalk, clipboard tucked under one arm like a weapon. Judith Kensington, president of the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association, had a reputation that preceded her. Neighbors whispered her name in equal parts fear and resentment. The locals had their own name for her. Karen, she approached with the forced smile of someone used to getting her way. "Welcome to Oak Ridge," she chirped. "I trust your move-in was smooth." I glanced at my wife, Cass, who stood beside me, in jeans and a navy t-shirt, her sheriff's badge still clipped to a belt. She was off-duty, but the badge was never far. Her eyes narrowed, assessing this overly enthusiastic welcome wagon. "It was fine, thanks," Cass replied, voice even but clipped. Judith extended a packet of documents. "These are your community standards. We like to keep everything ... harmonious. Here, just need a signature and I'll get your orientation scheduled." Cass didn't take the packet. "We won't be needing that." Judith blinked. "Excuse me, we're not part of Oak Ridge HOA," Cass said, folding her arms. "Our property line is just outside the HOA's jurisdiction." "That can't be right," Judith said quickly, the edge in her voice starting to crack through the sweetness. "Every home on West Elk Trail falls under our community agreement. That's how we preserve our value." I pulled out the deal ready printed and highlighted for this exact conversation. "This house is on a parcel grandfathered in decades ago. The original owner opted out when the HOA was formed. County confirmed it. Your borders stop at the old walnut tree." Judith's gaze flicked to the tree towering at the edge of our lawn, then back to the documents she now realized were worthless. Her expression soured. "Well," she sniffed, "that's highly irregular." Cass didn't flinch. "So is showing up uninvited with legal paperwork you have no authority to enforce." Judith's mask of civility cracked, just for a moment. "Oak Ridge is a close-knit community. Most of us believe it's better to be part of something orderly. Your independence could be disruptive." "To who?" Cass asked. "The people who think law norms are a form of protest." Judith huffed. "We take pride in uniformity. We take pride in being left alone." The silence was tense. Judith adjusted her collar, eyes narrowing. "Well, I'll need to speak with the board. This situation may require ... adjustment." Cass stepped forward. "Let me be clear. This house is not subject to your rules. We bought it for a reason. Don't mistake that as an invitation for negotiation." Judith's face went pale. She turned without another word and marched off, posture stiff, pride wounded. As she disappeared down the street, I exhaled. That was fast. "She'll be back," Cass muttered. "People like her don't lose gracefully." The following week, the first violation notice appeared in our mailbox, typed on Oak Ridge letterhead and sealed with self-importance. Improper mailbox color. Our mailbox was matte black, just like the rest on the street. I pulled it down, wrote "Not an HOA member" across it in red marker, and taped it to our front window. 2 days later, another "Garden decor exceeds acceptable quantity." We had one small wind chime and a bird feeder. Cass tossed it in the trash without reading past the headline. Then came the garbage can incident. One morning I found our bin wheeled up from the street and parked neatly beside our garage. A neon green sticky note read, "Trash must be placed at the end of the driveway for approved pickup. Section 4.3. It was signed JK. We weren't even using their trash service. Cass filed a complaint with the county. I installed cameras. We hoped that would cool things down. It didn't. The third week, 2 men with clipboards loitered near our fence, snapping photos. When I asked what they were doing, they claimed to be HOA inspection volunteers. I reminded them our property was private. They walked off, muttering something about non-compliant residents. Then came the doorbell. Karen was back with reinforcements. 2 HOA board members flanked her and behind them, a uniformed officer from the neighboring town's police department. Karen wore that same smug grin from our first meeting, except now it stretched wider. "We've received several complaints," she said loudly, "about unregistered renovations and unauthorized property use. This officer is here to document it." Garage door opened. Cass stepped out in full uniform and shirt, badge glinting in the morning sun, sidearm holstered at her hip. The board members froze. The officer blinked. Karen's voice caught in her throat. "Is there a problem?" Cass asked coolly. The officer's tone shifted fast. "Sheriff Wren." "Yes, I didn't know this was your property. I was called in for a code dispute. I'm sorry." Cass nodded once. "No harm done. But next time someone uses law enforcement to push civil nonsense, maybe check the map first." The officer apologized and left. The board members quickly followed. Karen stood for a beat longer, jaw clenched, then turned and stomped off, heels stabbing the pavement like punctuation marks. Cass looked at me and smirked. "Told you she'd be back." And now, the real battle had begun. Karen's pride hadn't just been bruised, that date had been publicly shattered. And when people like her lose face, they don't retreat, they retaliate. The following morning, the sprinkler system from the house directly behind us malfunctioned. Instead of watering a manicured backyard, the stream arced high over the fence and soaked our deck furniture. 3 times, on 3 separate days, always around the same hour, always when no one was home to stop it. Coincidence? Hardly. Cass documented everything: time-stamped videos, water damage, a typed statement. I offered to file a small claims complaint. She shook her head. Not yet. Let's see how far they're willing to go. Apparently, pretty far. Our internet started dropping. The technician who came out found the line had been deliberately kinked at the neighborhood junction box. Then came the noise complaints. Cass's patrol SUV, parked in our own driveway, was reported to be an eyesore and a violation of vehicle aesthetic standards. We weren't even under their jurisdiction. Then a formal envelope arrived, stamped and sealed in HOA. Blue. Notice of community disruption, request for immediate integration. Inside was a typed letter demanding we voluntarily accept Oak Ridge governance to avoid legal escalation. It claimed we were causing division, threatening property values, and refusing community cooperation. Kaz read the letter aloud. Her voice was calm, but the edge in it was razor sharp. They think they can paper push us into submission. I reached for the phone. Want me to call a lawyer? She tapped the badge on her chest. No, I've got something better. Cass wasn't just a uniform. She was a tactician, the daughter of a state trooper and the product of 2 decades in law enforcement. She didn't fight fire with fire. She waited for the wind to shift, then dropped the match. Over the next week, she went into silent mode, combing through records, reaching out to residents, digging through the HOA's filings like a forensic surgeon. Every evening, she spread documents across our dining table like a chessboard. Did you know, she said one night, that Oak Ridge collected over $220,000 in dues last year, and only $60,000 of it is accounted for in their public expenses? I blinked. Where's the rest? Private contractors, Karen's son's landscaping company, her husband's pest control business. Neither licensed. It was just the start. Cass met with neighbors discreetly. Many had their own horror stories. An elderly veteran fined for flying a flag without HOA approval. A single mom penalized for a missing fence picket. A couple forced to repaint their home twice in 1 year over shade inconsistencies. I'm building a case, Cass said, but I need their trust, and trust her. They did. A small group began gathering at our house, people who'd once kept their heads down, afraid of the HOA's wrath. Now, with the sheriff on their side, they shared documents, emails, even voice recordings of HOA board members making threats. It was no longer just about our house. It was about all of them. But Karen wasn't blind. She could feel control slipping through her fingers, and so she escalated one final time. One rainy morning, we returned from the grocery store to find a brand new sign staked into our front lawn: illegal. Occupants violating community INTGRTY. Cass stopped in her tracks. No logo, she noted. She didn't even have the guts to sign it. I yanked the sign out of the ground, mud flinging onto the walkway. That's it. We pressed charges. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened the mailbox. Inside was another envelope, but this one wasn't blue. It was from the county office. Cass slit it open and read silently. Then she smiled. What? I asked. She made a mistake, she said softly. She tried to register a complaint through official channels. It triggered a mandatory audit. My eyebrows shot up. And the county wants to see Oak Ridge's financial records. All of them. That evening, Cass met with 2 county investigators. She turned over her evidence, her interviews, and everything the residents had provided. Fraud, misuse of funds, harassment. Karen had turned the HOA into her personal fiefdom. Now, the walls were closing in. As we sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the walnut tree, Cass leaned back in her chair, arms crossed behind her head. She thought she was queen, she said, but she forgot something important. What's that? Cass glanced at her patrol SUV, the same one Karen had tried to label a nuisance. This town already has a sheriff, and the next move was hers. The subpoena landed on Karen Kensington's doorstep like a thunderclap on a clear day. The county's official seal glared from the envelope, bold and unforgiving. It demanded full access to Oak Ridge HOA's financial records, communication logs, and contractor contracts dating back 5 years. The audit wasn't optional, it was mandatory, and it came with teeth. Cass didn't wait for the fallout. She moved with precision, her badge lending more than authority, it lent urgency. With statements from nearly a dozen residents, she assembled a report that painted a damning picture. Karen had weaponized the HOA. The fines weren't just excessive, they were targeted. Dues were inflated without explanation. Repairs were farmed out to companies with no licenses, companies connected to her family. Cass handed everything to the county investigator in person. No emails, no leaks, just facts, sharp, clear, and impossible to ignore. This isn't a turf war, she told the lead auditor. It's community extortion hiding under policy. Word spread fast. Neighbors, once too afraid to speak, began to come forward in waves. Quiet conversations at mailboxes turned into organized meetings in driveways. Files emerged: scanned emails, deleted board minutes, receipts for lavish dinners billed as HOA leadership retreats. Karen had lived like a CEO while demanding residents power wash their sidewalks weekly or face $200 fines. The sheriff's report named names. Karen wasn't acting alone, her entire board was complicit. And as the pressure mounted, cracks formed. Board member Derek Hall, a meek middle-aged accountant he walked into the county office and confessed, told them everything. How Karen manipulated elections by quietly invalidating ballots. How she made special arrangements for friends to skip fines. How she shredded resident complaints before they could ever be addressed on exchange for immunity. Derek handed over a thumb drive containing internal communications, the kind of smoking gun most investigations only dream of. Cass received a copy. She read every line. One message chilled her. Sent by Karen 3 days before the false sign was staked into our lawn. Greater than Ren doesn't scare me, sheriff or not. She's just another power-drunk cop in uniform. Let's keep applying pressure. I want her gone before the next board vote. Cass didn't flinch when she read it, but I saw something change in her eyes, something colder, more resolved. She wants to play games with power, Cass murmured. Let's remind her what real power looks like. Within days, the county issued formal charges: financial misconduct, falsification of documents, and harassment through administrative abuse. A cease and desist order followed. Oak Ridge HOA was to halt all operations until the investigation concluded. Karen's title was stripped, her access revoked. The silence from her house was deafening. But Cass wasn't done. She returned to every resident who had suffered under Karen's rule: elderly veterans, single parents, first-time homeowners who had been too intimidated to fight back. She helped them file individual complaints, encouraged them to join the civil suit already taking shape. You're not just victims, she told them, you're witnesses, and your stories matter. One elderly woman teared up and hugged her. Karen, for her part, tried to fight back. She called in favors, hired a lawyer from out of town, and tried spinning a story about political revenge and sheriff overreach. But the evidence crushed her defenses. The town paper published a front-page expose: Ho Queen Falls. From Grace, Sheriff Wren leads community reckoning. Cass didn't give interviews. She didn't need the spotlight. But people noticed. She started getting letters, cookies left on our porch. Neighbors offered to repaint our fence, mow our lawn, even babysit our dog. For a town that once watched us with cautious eyes, Cedar Glen had become a place of gratitude. The best thank you came quietly one evening. Just before sunset, Cass and I were sitting on the porch sipping sweet tea. The air was calm, heavy with the scent of pine. From down the street came the unmistakable sound of moving boxes being loaded into a van. Karen, she never looked up as the movers worked, just stood on her porch, arms crossed, jaw tight. But even from a distance, we could see it. The HOA queen was dethroned, and she was leaving her kingdom behind. Cass leaned back. Content. I didn't arrest her, she said softly, but I gave the people something better. What's that? I asked. She smiled, just to sand their voice back. And though Karen was gone, Cass knew the job wasn't finished yet. Oak Ridge didn't collapse overnight, but without Karen at the helm, its stranglehold on the neighborhood began to unravel. The board, now gutted and leaderless, was placed under temporary oversight by the county. A full forensic audit followed. What they found confirmed everything Cass had uncovered. More funds had been misappropriated, residents intimidated, and rules enforced with selective cruelty. For years, Karen had built a regime masquerading as community management. Now her legacy was being dismantled, one policy at a time. Cass didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She showed up for every town hall meeting that followed, in uniform, and on time. Not to patrol, not to command, just to listen, to let people know that someone had their back now. One by one, neighbors approached her, not with complaints, but with stories. Stories of being silenced, of fines they'd paid quietly, of the relief they felt now that the fear was gone. I forgot what it was like to enjoy my own porch, one man said, shaking Cass's hand. Thank you for reminding me. The HOA wasn't abolished entirely. Instead, it was restructured. A volunteer committee of residents, not handpicked loyalists, was elected to oversee basic maintenance tasks: the community garden, the seasonal trash pickup, streetlight repairs. But they had no power to fine, no right to inspect. Their role became what it should have always been: supportive, not sovereign. Cass declined every invitation to join. She preferred her authority to remain rooted in service, not politics. As for us, life settled back into something close to normal. I repaired the deck. Cass started planting a row of lavender along the fence. The mailbox, once the target of Hoa fury, now proudly bore a custom plaque: Wren House, private property. Every so often we'd catch a glimpse of what used to be. One evening a couple strolled past and paused at the edge of our lawn. Looks peaceful here, the man said. It is now, Cass replied from the porch, her voice light but firm. But the peace hadn't come cheap. A few weeks after Karen's departure, we received word she'd reached a settlement with the county: financial penalties, a non-disclosure agreement, and a formal ban from serving on any HOA board in the state. She wouldn't face jail time, but her reputation was gone. Her influence erased. It was justice not flashy or dramatic, but thorough and permanent. That same week, Cass was invited to speak at the state conference for rural law enforcement. Her topic: community conflicts and the limits of civil power. She began her talk with one line: "The badge on my chest doesn't grant me control, it demands responsibility." The applause lasted longer than the speech. Back in Cedar Glen, the transformation was quiet but undeniable. Children rode their bikes without fear of violations. Gardens flourished in unconventional shapes. Flags flew freely, mailboxes were painted in bold colors, and people smiled without glancing over their shoulders. One night, Cass and I sat out under the stars, the air thick with the hum of crickets and the soft rustle of wind through the walnut tree. "You ever regret taking this fight on?" I asked. Cass sipped her tea and thought for a moment. "No," she said finally, "not for a second. The day we moved in, I saw a woman trying to turn a community into a kingdom, and I don't kneel to self-appointed royalty." I chuckled. "You're not bad at speeches, Sheriff," she smiled. "I prefer action." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that only comes when peace has been earned. Then Cass stood, stretched, and turned toward the house. "I'm on duty at 6, she said, "and this porch isn't going to sweep itself." I followed her inside, a final glance at the calm street reminding me of how far we'd come. The HOA still existed, yes, but it was no longer feared because now everyone knew exactly where the real power lived. Not behind clipboards and made-up ordinances, but in the house with the lavender fence, the unwavering badge, and the sheriff who didn't flinch. Not even when the whole neighborhood tried to stand in her way.